Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Steven van Tuijl, Managing Director for Europe Vistra. He speaks about the power of perspective. Don't resist the future, embrace it. All that happening right now in Flex and the City.
Hello everybody, this is Rachel Treese for Flex and the City. This afternoon, I'm delighted to be speaking to Steven van Tuijl. Hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Steven. Steven is the Managing Director Europe at Vistra. He's a Dutchman, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here, Steven.
Thank you, Rachel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Real pleasure. So Steven, I know a little bit about you because we met this year at the Alfie conference, but love to hear a little more about your story and how you came to be, living and working in Germany and married to a Swiss lady. So do tell us your story.
Sure. You already mentioned it. I'm Dutch originally. I was born in the south of the Netherlands in Roermond, very close to the German border. And in 2006, I was at a point in my life where I had the liberty or the opportunity to make a very conscious decision about did I want to stay in the Netherlands? Did I want to live somewhere else? And I had a good friend who was working for the Banque Cantonale de Genève at that point in Geneva, and I met him at some point, and I was talking to him about my thoughts and my plans, and he said, you have to come to Switzerland. And I thought, to Switzerland? And well, to ski? Or why do you want me there? And why? And he said, you don't understand. And you need to come visit me. And I did. I visited him for 2 weeks, and we talked a lot, and I fell in love with the country. And I moved there in 2006 and spent 5 years building up a business unit for Michael Page back then, which was a lot of fun and crazy times. In 2006, the economy was extremely strong. And then in 2008, of course, we ended in the financial crisis, which was also really interesting to deal with that on the back of that. And met my wife. So fell in love with the country first, and then fell in love with my wife much more, of course. And we got married. We got married relatively quickly after that, and had our first child. And in the meanwhile, I got in touch with ADP because they actually gave me a mandate. And from that mandate, I got to know ADP very well. Was asked basically to join them, which I did. And then I had a 10-year journey at ADP, which started in Switzerland and with responsibility for Portugal and Spain and Poland. And then in 2014, my then boss said, Steven, listen, we need you in Germany. Are you willing to move to Germany? And my wife is very uncomplicated with these kind of things. She said, sure. So we moved to Germany in 14. That was just 2 months after the birth of our third, and we've been living here close to Würzburg ever since. And I joined Vistra in May of last year, because I just felt I was ready to do something new and exciting. And Vistra struck me immediately. It was the people that I met there, bright, talented, uncomplicated, really ambitious, big plans ahead, but all very realistically done and strategically well planned. And I guess the third thing that really struck me was the incredible opportunity for growth. So I joined Vistra, and I'm there very happy ever since. Responsible for our European market, which is about 1/3 of our business, with 16 different countries. Recently, also in France. So, and if you counted along with me, 4 kids. So we had our 4th kid, 3 daughters, 1 boy, here in Germany. They're between 5 and 12, and they keep me quite busy, as you can imagine.
I'm sure they do. I know. I only have one, and she's kept me busy enough. That's for sure. So I know you're really passionate about leadership. We met at the Alfie conference, which was all about talent in the industry. Do you think there are enough great leaders in this industry, Steven?
I think, yes, there are great leaders in the industry. I just have a general observation around leadership. That is, when you look at very expert-driven industries, and financial services to a certain extent is also one of them, you typically see people who are incredibly talented and experienced in a very specific topic. and they've been able to progress in their industry very, very well because of that. But it also sometimes prevented people from picking up on leadership skills, and maybe that was also not needed for a long period. I think what we're seeing now is that the way our financial services industry, but also other industries, are fighting to get talent and to retain talent, there's much more focus on that leadership part. So I think we need to realize that first. I think we need to realize that more than ever, being a leader, and then of course we can discuss about what that actually entails, is more important than ever before. And if I need to answer your question very straight up, I would say there's not enough of that in the financial services industry, in my opinion.
So we've all heard about the Great Resignation. We've heard that leaders are leaving, our industry and other industries. So senior people are leaving. And then we're also struggling to get talent in at the bottom end. So what do you think that leadership needs to look like to help attract people to the industry?
I don't like this expression, this Great Resignation.
I don't either.
People are not resigning; they're not giving up. I would call it a great reflection. I think we had a couple of factors coming together the last couple of years. Pandemic and perhaps people having a bit of a better financial buffer. So people actually had the time to think about what's really important to them. I think we also see new generations coming in, and that's a trend that has been, ongoing for I would say the last 40 years, where people simply have a very different view on what's important in life. And that comes together. So to your question, what does great leadership entail? I think, first of all, it starts with listening and being aware that people are not coming to work for you and staying to work for you based on the same set of values and parameters than they would 15, 20 years ago. Yeah, I've always thought that the more we automate, the more we talk about digitalization, the more we talk about efficiency, etc., the more important the human being becomes. Because at the end of the day, it's a human being that makes the difference between being successful, not successful, not the machine, etc. That's the tool that we use for that. I think people want to be recognized for that. People want to be part of it, part of something. People want to see that they're being heard and that they're being recognized and that they're being looked at as human beings who have their personal lives and their personal preferences, but also as professionals who really want to make a contribution. And once we start recognizing that and we start changing our behavior accordingly, then we will also see that it will become easier again to hire talent and to keep them on board.
You've mentioned you've got 4 children. Does your eldest know what you do, Stephen?
She does. So I think the youngest one thinks that I run a call center or work for a call center because I'm always on the phone or in Teams or when I'm here, when I'm not traveling. But I think the oldest one does. So I always try to explain that whatever you want to do in business, the more you can focus on what you do best, and the less you're burdened with support, the more successful you can be. And that we at Vista, we make sure that our clients have that support so that they can focus on what they do best, and we take care of everything else. Obviously, do not go into the details of it with my 12-year-old, but she gets it. She gets it.
Yeah. And would you encourage your children to join the industry? I'm curious.
Yes, that definitely. It would be a bit hypocrite if I wouldn't, but I would want to make sure that they go in it with a very innovative perspective on the business or on any business. Go in with the elan to change something and not to just protect or keep it the way that it has been for so many years.
So if you could wave a magic wand and transform the industry, what would you do? What would be the big game changer, do you think?
I think, first of all, I think there's a strong need for transparency. I think there's still too much happening in the backgrounds makes it difficult for people to understand what's really going on in the industry as such, and that maybe also makes it less attractive for people to join. I don't really believe in magic wands. I do think that there is a lot that we can do in terms of automation that we're not yet doing. If you look at other industries, they are completely automated, and the financial service industry is very reluctant to do that. I think when it comes to talent, which is one of the big challenges for growth at this point, and particularly in such a small country like Luxembourg, which is on one hand such an important center in the European finance world. At the same time, it's so limited by its relatively small population, and then also the whole set of regulations that make it so difficult for people to work from abroad and to use global shared service centers that can do a part of the work. And so I think this combination of being much more transparent about what's going on and looking at this as a truly global industry and not just as a segmented, federalized, market-based industry, investing in digitalization, further investing. I love the Luxembourg House of Finance initiative, because there's so many great entrepreneurs who are doing so much for to drive that digitalization agenda forward, but also opening up. And that's not just Luxembourg; it's many of the markets where I think sometimes the regulators stand in their own way. On one hand, wanting to make sure that the country and the economy continues to thrive on the financial services industry, but at the same time, sometimes making it so complicated that you reach a ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to young people, if you had a young person who was starting in financial services, what would be the advice that you'd give them?
Well, first of all, smile, because life is great, and that doesn't it's irrelevant in which industry you work. I'm not sure if this is specifically finance, but I always tell people, it's what my first boss always told me: to hire people who are better than you. I think specifically now we have a couple of interesting years ahead of us. I think when things get tough, keep going, because it probably means that you're on the right track. And I think what always helped me a lot is to not compartmentalize your thinking. There is no clear segregation between love and life and work. It's all connected to each other. And I think that's what you need in order to find I don't like this word work-life balance. It's a harmony. You need to create a harmony for it. So I think these are the general advices. I think specifically maybe for the financial services industry is listen very closely, but challenge everything you hear.
Good advice there, everyone. Listen very closely, but challenge everything you hear. And in terms of leadership, Stephen, has there been a leader that you've worked with, or is there a leader out there that you really admire?
There's two names that come up, and it sometimes changes, of course, when you're more exposed to one or the other. So one person specifically in financial industry that I have great respect for is Ray Dalio, and he wrote a fantastic book called Principles, and it connects very much to something that I believe as a fundament for leadership, is that in order for any person and an organization to be successful, you need to provide a maximum amount of responsibility and autonomy to every single person within that organization. And the way that you do that is by setting very clear decision-making frameworks and assuming that people never make mistakes on purpose. When a mistake happens, it simply means that you need to readjust your framework. And that is a philosophy that I've had for many, many years. And Dalio wrote this book, which is called Principles, and it's split in two parts. One is about work, and one is life. And when he basically says, he takes their algorithm to make investment decisions, and he says, if you can parameterize all the different factors that make up an investment decision, you can set a framework for those decisions. And you can do the same in your life, and you can do the same for leadership. Explaining where you want to go, what you want to achieve, what you do not want to achieve, which rules we need to obey, and which freedoms we have. That's the job that we have as leaders. And that is also what allows you to give a maximum amount of autonomy and responsibility to each and every single person in your company. So that is something that appeals very much to me. The other person, and I'm a huge Formula One fan, You can imagine that at this point, it's a very good time for a Dutch guy to be a Formula One fan with Max Verstappen. Exactly. So now someone else that I really admire is Michael Schumacher, and it's not so much because he won the World Championship 7 times. It's much more about how the type of professional and human being that he was. There's a brilliant documentary out on him, by the way. He worked through thick and thin. He drove for bad teams, for good teams. He drove for teams that were bad and that became really, really great under his leadership. He was great on track. He was hard but fair. And then he would get out of the car and would work with the guys in the garage until deep in the night to fine tune the car. And leading by example, rolling up his sleeves, not feeling better than anyone else there, understanding that it's only the team that makes the result and not him as an individual. And I think he personified that so incredibly well. I find that truly inspiring. And if you look at his son Mick, who's also driving, he's such a fine gentleman, and he hope he does well. But
absolutely,
yeah,
he knew how to harness the collective, didn't he? That was
oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So with your permission, we're going to create a bit of IP here today, because we've talked about frameworks, we've talked about perspectives, and we've talked about transformation. So I'm imagining the Steven Van Tuijl triangle here. So what would be the 3 key parts of that triangle that you'd put out there and say, all of you leaders, this is what you need to have?
I think one corner of the triangle is empathy and the ability to attune to the people that you work with, or that you, be that your colleagues or your clients for that matter. I think the other one is, and it's such a classic, but I always keep coming back to it. You need to lead by example. You cannot expect people to do something for you if you do not guide the way. If you're not right up there in front with everybody else, I do not think that you can expect people at the end of the day to follow you. And I think the third one, there's a lot of talk always about being a servant leader or being humble. I don't think that is something that you can tell someone to be. Just as when you say, oh, you just need to be authentic. You're either authentic or you're not. But this point of having someone who is able to be humble, I think that's almost a prerequisite in the end, being a very successful leader. I don't think that you can be a good leader if you think that you are more important than the rest. I think you need to feel that all the others come first and you're there to support them. That's my personal opinion.
Great stuff. I love it. Wait for the diagram, Stephen. Wait for the diagram. So when you're not busy leading people in the financial services industry and raising 4 children and being a wonderful husband, what is it that you love to do?
I'm very much a mountain guy. I love to be up in the mountains. I like to see unspoiled nature. I love the majestic look of the mountains. We talked a bit about humbleness. It makes me feel very humble because you realize how small you are, and not just in size, but also in time. The time fragment that we spend. The air does me really, does me good, and I love being up there. I do a lot of sports stuff with my kids. Love to go karting. My son mountain bikes very well, so we go to races together, and we love to ski together. But it's all I would say mountain related activities that we enjoy doing. And
I thought you were from the Netherlands.
Yeah, well, yeah, the Netherlands is really flat. I think it's I need to compensate for that. I need to compensate for having spent 26 years in the Netherlands, and I only want to see the mountains. I love to cook. That's a real passion. If I need to get my head clear, then I cook. Yeah.
And you cook, and so there's something in what you're saying which is about well, there's perspectives, that's for sure. If we compare the mountains with the Netherlands, and there's something about that unspoilt nature that's appealing for you. Am I right?
You are right. It's I've always felt that it helps you being up in the mountains to take a bit of distance from everything that's going on in the valley to make the picture complete. And I think it's always helped me to get a different perspective, to look at the bigger picture. And it's often, I think you have this sentence that says, you cannot fix problems with the same thinking that was used to create them, right? And for me, being up in the mountains, it helps me to take a very fresh perspective because it's unspoiled, because it's not cluttered yet with stuff that we did. It allows me to kind of reset or to refresh my brain, as well, to think about stuff differently than I used to. And I mean, other people might do that in different ways, but if the mountains help, then that's I think good. And also looking at the financial services industry, I think we're up for a lot of change. We talked before about digitalization. I think a lot is going to be happening there. We're going to have macroeconomically, we're going to have a few interesting years ahead of us. So we need to start thinking from an unspoiled perspective about how we're going to tackle some of these things.
Fantastic. Steven van Tuijl, thank you so much for being with us today on Flex in the City. It's been a fantastic conversation. And we've even got a little bit of IP out of it, Steven, which I'll gladly share. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Rachel. It was a pleasure.
You just listened to Flex in the City. Catch us on our next episode.